Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mrs. Gallagher, and today we're going to discuss congruent figures. So our objective is to identify congruent figures and use them to solve problems. So let's discuss some vocabulary and key concepts. We want to show how the triangles are congruent. And there's three different kind of theorems to show why the two triangles are congruent. Let's look at the first one to the left. If you notice here, we have one slash mark here and one slash mark here. That indicates that one side is congruent to each other. Then we have two slash marks and two slash marks. That indicates that both of those sides are congruent. And lastly, we have three slash marks and three slash marks. That indicates that those two sides are congruent. Therefore, these two triangles are congruent due to side, side, side. And side, side, side indicates if all three sides are congruent to each other, therefore the two triangles are congruent. Let's look what the next one says, SAS. So first you have one slash mark here and one slash mark here. That indicates that both of those sides are equal. Then we have an arc here for the angle and another arc right here for the angle. That indicates that those two angles are congruent to each other. And lastly, we have two slash marks and two slash marks. Therefore, these two triangles are congruent because of side, angle, side theorem. So we have two sides and one angle that are congruent to each other. Therefore, the triangles will be congruent to each other. And our last theorem is called ASA. So what does that mean? Let's look. So we have a one arc here and one arc here. Therefore, that indicates the two angles are equal to each other. We have a slash mark here and one slash mark here. Indicates the two sides are congruent to each other. And then we have two arcs here and two arcs here, which indicates the two angles are equal to each other. As a result, the two triangles are equal to each other due to angle, side, angle theorem. Okay, so side, 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 and angle, side, angle are three different methods used to identify when two triangles are congruent to each other. So what exactly are congruent polygons? Congruent polygons are polygons that have the same size and the same shape. So congruent polygons are polygons that have the same size and the same shape. The arcs indicate the angles are congruent. So the arcs indicate the angles are congruent. And the arcs are right here, we discussed that. And the slash marks indicate the sides are congruent. So the slash marks indicate the sides are congruent. And remember, the slash marks are right here. So let's do some examples together. So let's look at example 1. It says, write a congruent statement for the congruent figures at the right. So there's two figures here. The first quadrilateral, we're going to label it 1, and the second is 2. And let's look at our angles first. It says angle A is congruent to, and if we look at angle A is right here, and it is indicated by one arc. So you want to find where is it equal to on the second triangle, one arc. Well, that would be angle M. Therefore, angle A is congruent to angle M. Let's do the next one, angle B. Okay, so angle B right here has two arcs. Where do you see two arcs in the second quadrilateral? Angle N. So angle B is congruent to angle N. Let's look at the next one, angle C. Okay, so angle C in the first quadrilateral has three arcs. That's congruent to, let's find three arcs, angle O. So angle C is congruent to angle O. And lastly is angle D. And angle D has four arcs. Where do you see four arcs in the second quadrilateral? Angle P. So angle D is congruent to angle P. Now let's identify the sides. And when we identify the sides, you want to find the slash mark, and then you're going to follow the arcs to how you write the statement. So we have AB. What do we notice about AB? AB has one slash mark. Okay, so where do you find one slash mark in the second quadrilateral? Well, that's MN. Now we write it by following the arcs. So that means is AB goes from one arc to two arc. Where does it go from one arc to two arcs in the second? MN. So you're going to write AB is congruent to MN. Now let's find BC. So BC has two slash marks. Where do you see two slash marks in the second quadrilateral? NO. But make sure we follow our arcs. So BC is two arcs to three arcs. Therefore, we're going to write it down as two arcs to three arcs. So that's going to be NO. Next is CD. CD is congruent to, okay, so CD we have three marks. So where do we see three slash marks? OP. And then you want to follow your arcs. So CD goes from three arcs to four arcs. And where do you see three arcs to four arcs? O to P. Therefore, CD is congruent to OP. And lastly is DA. So DA has four slash marks. So identify your four slash marks in the second. And DA goes from four arcs to one arc. So you want to follow the same pattern. Four arcs to one arc, and that's going to be PM. DA is congruent to PM. So our next step is to prove the two quadrilaterals are congruent to each other. So we're going to write a statement. So since angle A corresponds to angle M, and angle B corresponds to angle N, and angle C corresponds to angle O, and angle D corresponds to angle P, our congruent statement is quadrilateral ABCD is congruent to MNOP. And how do we come up with that? Well, let's look at our figures. A is one arc, B is two arcs, C is three arcs, and D is four arcs. So we have to follow the same pattern. M is one arc, N is two arcs, O is three arcs, and P is four arcs. Therefore, ABCD is congruent to MNOP. So I'd like you to do is the next section, the quick check. You're going to write a congruent statement for the congruent figures at the right. So I'm going to start you off. I want you to tell me what angle is congruent to angle T. So angle T is congruent to, and you got to tell me what it is. Then you're going to tell me what angle is congruent to angle R is congruent to, and then angle S is congruent to. Next, you're going to tell me which sides are congruent to. So side TR is congruent to. You're going to fill that in for me. RS is congruent to. You're going to fill that in for me. And then ST is congruent to. And you're going to fill that in for me. Then lastly, you're going to make your statement, your congruent statement. Triangle, and tell me what the triangle is congruent to triangle, and then tell me what the triangle is. And we will discuss that in class. Let's do another example together. So example 2 says, show that the triangles are congruent. So now we're going to prove why these two triangles are congruent. So it says angle Q is congruent to angle E. So we have angle Q, which has one arc, is congruent to angle E. Therefore, the two angles are congruent. Now we have QP is congruent to EY. So QP has one slash and EY has one slash. Therefore, the sides are congruent. Next, we have angle P is congruent to angle Y. Both have the two slashes. Therefore, another angle is congruent. So now it says triangle QPR is congruent to EYT. So the two triangles are congruent due to ASA, which is the angle side angle method we discussed earlier. So we just proved the two triangles are congruent to each other due to ASA. An angle is congruent, a side is congruent, and another angle is congruent. Let's do another example together. It states, a surveyor drew the diagram at the right to find the distance from J to I across the cannon. Triangle GHI is congruent to triangle KJI. What is the distance JI? Then it states, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Since JI corresponds to HI, JI equals how many feet? So let's dissect what this means. We know that GHI is congruent to, so GHI is congruent to KJI. And that means corresponding parts are congruent. Therefore, all the angles and sides are equal to each other. Since JI, and JI is right here, corresponds to HI, which is right here, JI is how many feet? Well, HI says what? HI says it equals 48 feet. Therefore, if HI equals 48 feet and JI is corresponding, JI is also equal to 48 feet. So let's do one more example together. So let's do one more problem together. It says, show that each pair of triangles is congruent. So what you want to do is you want to look at your triangles and see if there are any slash marks or arcs to indicate these triangles are congruent. So in 2A, we notice we have one slash mark here in the first triangle and one slash mark here in the second triangle. Therefore, YZ is congruent to QP. Notice we're going from top to bottom. That's how I want to write it down. So YZ is congruent to QP. Okay, so that's one slash mark. So now, are there any other sides or angles equal to each other? Well, yes. If you look here, we have two slash marks in the first and two slash marks in the second. Again, you're going ZX to PR. Therefore, side ZX is congruent to PR. Okay, so now let's look again. Is there any other slash marks or arcs indicating sides or angles are congruent? Yes, there is. We have 3 slash marks here and 3 slash marks there. Therefore, XY is congruent to RQ. XY is congruent to RQ. Now notice I said XY went from bottom to top, so you want to write it the same way in your second, from bottom to top. Okay, so what do we have here? We have 2 congruent triangles. And how do we know they're congruent? Because we have 3 different sides that are congruent. Therefore, our reasoning is the side, side, side method. SSS. So since 3 different sides are equal to each other, the triangles are equal to each other due to the side, side, side theorem. So I'd like you to do on your own you try the quick check. I'd like you to do B, 3, A, B, and C. We will discuss it in class. Thank you.